Welcome to yet another episode of Gender Equality Talks, or GE Talks, in the lead up to the International Conference on Family Planning taking place this month in Pattaya, Thailand. We are indeed privileged to have with us today Sonal Mehta, the South Asia Regional Director for International Planned Parenthood Federation, or IPPF as it is called. Sonal is a long-standing and widely respected advocate for gender equality and human rights. Welcome, Sonal, and thanks for finding time for us today.
Thank you.
Sonal, can you share with us the progress made on family planning and broadly on gender equality and human rights in the South Asia region?
Sure. So I'm going to talk from my life experience and my professional experience. And I think that there has been some progress. I would not say there has been no progress on gender equality and human rights and also in family planning. However, I think we have a long way to go before we are able to achieve the SDG goals of 2030. I think South Asia is a combination of countries where we have some very progressive rules, regulations, supportive of human rights, supportive of gender equality. And then we have some traditional values, systems, cultures that stop it. We also have some countries with extreme, whatever you want to call right, left, center views where which restrict freedom of women in many ways. Again, COVID-19 did not help at all. There's also a lot of intimate partner violence. I think a report of UNICEF said about 37% of South Asian women experience intimate partner violence. And these are the issues that we don't talk about enough. We are not even talking about the diversity within women, within people, within gender norms. And then family planning has traditionally been looked from a lens of population control. And therefore, it could not really break the shackles. Although I must say, many governments have realized the fertility rate has kind of come to a replacement level and have started thinking differently. But again, they go from one extreme to the other, making pushing all the family planning products and services, and then suddenly go to the other extreme of completely taking away everything. And so I would think it has never been looked from the gender equity angle. And I think that is necessary, which I think is work in progress as of now.
Yes. And so can you quote some best practice examples, some countries which have really made progress on this front? And
Sure.
also about family planning, as you said rightly, that it is basically linked to controlling the family or the number of children. And also, do you think even that onus has fallen more on the women rather than the men?
Correct. So you can start by seeing the research and development in contraceptives. You can start by seeing the setup. Our health system is set up. I can get pregnant, deliver a child, and that's it. Forget about my health, my well-being. Again, new issues like, not new, but issues like STIs, sexually transmitted infections, HIV. As I said, that family planning within diverse couples, those things are not even thought about, not even talked about. Although I would say there are many good practices, I won't call it best practices, but there are countries such as Nepal, for example, has quite liberal um, laws, services. There's a lot of task sharing where the access to basic family planning services is available to a remote villages through the ANMs, such as implants. India has good abortion laws, quite supportive environment. I won't say completely, but very skillful providers. Um, and Pakistan, for example, has very good service, although they don't call it abortion, whatever way they call it, but the services are available. But the level of Again, the lens is more from population control, population support. If the lens is changed to broader sexual reproductive health, to people centered approach, I think the scenario can change very quickly. If I'm allowed to decide if I want a child, if I want abortion, if I want a contraceptive, I think my decision will be my responsibility rather than government telling me do this and do that. And I think that shift needs to be brought. And that I'm not sure many countries really think from that angle. And one of the important thing I think there is also how much we spend on health overall and more in the family planning. Some of the countries have no budget for contraceptives, for example. That is a little too extreme.
Can you elaborate on the progress and challenges in the context of? Now, I have three different contexts to put forward to you.
Uh-huh.
First is the young people and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Second is older persons and sexual health and rights. That seems to be very neglected.
Mm-hmm.
And disability rights and sexual and reproductive health rights.
Sure. Young person, my favorite topic. I'd love to talk about that.
Okay.
So apparently, I think right now we have the largest population of young people in the world, right? Before any time earlier. If we put Asia Pacific, I think we have about 1 billion people, 10 to 24 age, with a lot of diversity, with a lot of they have mind of their own. They have kind of the sense of independence they have is very different from what it used to be. Nonetheless, I think UNESCO, UNFPA, WHO, all of them feel various reports keep coming out saying that probably young people are not well prepared. They are ill prepared and with insufficient knowledge, insufficient life skill to negotiate safe, consensual relationships. We hear about cyberbullying, we hear about peer pressure. They are not necessarily they don't have access to services and commodities for safe sex, for example. They don't have, some of the government are still thinking in a very traditional way, and access to even simple comprehensive sexuality education is not there, and that can create a very crooked situation where on one hand there would be an information boom, on the other hand there will not be a kind of what they need. So there are progress, and don't read me wrong, I think child marriages have gone down in South Asia drastically. I think over last 2 decades, it has really gone down to, I think, 50% or something. But some of the countries again have the highest adolescent fertility. So it's, as I said, the South Asia as such is a mix of a lot of opposing thoughts. And one of the thing I would really sincerely want that we really need comprehensive sexuality education, but that is not enough. Young people need to be in the driving seat. We need to really provide opportunities and occasions for them, create platforms where they can speak up, they feel confident enough to share about themselves and can access services. If I'm a 16-year-old, I can step into a health setup without being feared, without being tabooed, and ask for a contraceptive. I think that day we will be able to ask for a HIV test without any adult consent. Even basic services are not available. And so awareness on one hand and services on the other can really bring about a lot of change. Otherwise, so it's interesting. Young people can become great asset, they can become a population problem if we are not able to provide them the right opportunities. So that would, I would say about SRHR among young people. For the older people, again, Asia Pacific is a region where we have countries who are really getting old very quickly. Japan, for example. And again, our health system is more or less made for kind of middle age, where the reproductive and child focused, a lot of it is child focused, mother and child, I would say. I don't want to say woman and child because women's health is also often neglected. So for again, all the data shows that men and women both remain sexually active, for whatever people want to call it, old, 60. I mean, now we say 70 is the new 50. So if we do that, then maybe middle age. And you also, there are also reports where people say that about 28 to 30%, I think 39%, older men and women report at least one sexual dysfunction. And that can lead to frustration. And we neither have enough counseling services nor sexuality education, information, awareness services, nor enough counseling. And I won't say it's not there, it's there. Partner communication and partner relationship and all that. And I think that, and again, there is an assumption partner is also always in the marriage. That is also now an old concept. So there is a lot of changing dynamics among older people, so-called older people. And when I say older, I often mean above 60, because that's the UN population definition. Although I'm going to be near that very soon, and I don't feel older at all. So that is also something, like we need to change definition of young people, we need to change definition of old people. Again, I would say there are no rules or regulations that will stop them from accessing services, but there is a lot of social taboo. If I'm an older person, should I be asking for a condom? If I'm an older person, why do you need IUD? It's those kind of discussions. Haven't you menopaused? And like, that's none of your business. Those kind of privacy, that kind of respect for individual privacy, I think it's in the life cycle missing. And I think our health system really need to redesign itself, realign itself. Although post ICPD 20, there has been discussions around the different age group and needs, and there has been recognition of even the key populations within that as a group, and older people has been put as a key population. I don't think they're marginalized as they're still marginalized. Their marginalization is still there, but with some countries having a priority for responding to older people, I think that thing will change. I know there are a lot of old age homes opening in many countries. I know there are a lot of services being redesigned, older living places, dining spaces. I wish we can also step up our sexual reproductive health services for them. Then finally, the third disability, and we have very actively working with the people who are disabled in Nepal, and it is really eye-opening to see that it is eye-opening to see that we are almost disabled blind. You kind of run up a stairs without even thinking that I could be in a condition where I can't even walk, and it's things like that. So I wish we could institutionalize a disability. Like in many developed countries, you see a ramp irrespective of whether anybody working there is disabled or not. And I wish we are able to reach that level, but if not, definitely we need sexual reproductive health services with a special angle. When we started working, we did not, I mean, of course, we knew at a certain level, but when you kind of listen to people, it makes a difference. The level of sexual exploitation, the level of gender-based violence among the disabled people is extremely high. The clinical services are not tuned to responding to disabled people. WHO estimates about 15% of world population is having one or the other form of disability. But I don't think the health system is equipped to respond to this 15%. And particularly, I would want to bring the angle of gender, particularly for women and for diverse population. The comprehensive sexuality education, whatever is available, is not equipped to respond to their needs. The services, the education services, the gatekeepers, the policymakers, none of them really acknowledge. Again, I'm happy to say there are organizations who are now picking up, and the intersectionality between disability, young, diverse, old, is probably something that the system will have to respond to very quickly.
Yeah,
And I hope it is going to be discussed in ICFP.
yes, very well said, Sonal. And particularly regarding all these three, I feel there has to be a change in the social norms and social values also.
Correct.
Firstly, as
Correct.
you said, for the young, that they should be equipped with the correct information. There is a lot
Correct.
of information, but a lot of is misinformation, or that is there, which is actually leading them this way and that way. And again, about the elderly and what the so-called old age. For me, there is no old age till the mind is young. So I agree with you there. You will never be old,
With
Sonal.
you.
So, yes. So the way the society looks up, just recently I saw somebody from India who had gone to, I think, Bangkok or somewhere in Thailand, had posted a picture and saying that there were some expats there, the older people, and he says, look how they are behaving. In India, we don't do this. That is the age to be religious and take the name of God all the time and think of nothing else. So that sort of social sort of bizarre way of thinking. And regarding disability, what you have said is right. And I just wanted to share a recent example. CNS did with Dhaka Journalists Union in Bangladesh. We did a workshop for disability and sexual and reproductive health rights. And it was done in the auditorium of DRU. And then there was no ramp there. They did not realize that they just said there are 3 or 4 steps to climb when the persons and the speakers can come. But they took note of it and they put up a ramp. They said, we will ensure that now is a ramp, and thank you for pointing that out. So that change happened. So that is true, that perhaps, as you said, that we are blind to all those things. So if we open our eyes to it, perhaps we will see that.
Yeah. Can I quickly share one example?
Yes.
Yeah. So I had gone for a visit to Nepal Family Planning Association, and I met Sanjana, a young person who is working with people who are disabled, and she was pointing out that, basic small things which we take for granted. As a young person, I want to look pretty. People who are disabled, they forget that, they are also people, and it's the same feeling they would have. Basic thing like a bra for a young girl. If I'm disabled, I'm handed over without anybody asking me what size, what type, what. If I'm not disabled, I will be buying my own bra. And she was saying even that level of difference, and it's not because I'm anything else. It's only because I'm disabled. And to me, it was a real eye opener that you're right. I mean, we really need to. It did open an eye for me, and you start looking everywhere. Like, do we have a ramp? Do we have the lift? If it is, of course, not everything is possible within the resources, but that mindset is something that you need to create.
The disability of our mindset and a way of thinking has to change. That has to be overcome. Sonal, you talked about STI, sexually transmitted infections, and HIV. And not recently, but of late, antimicrobial resistance, or what we call drug resistance, or AMR, that is another rising issue of concern. So do you see AMR a major challenge in the context of sexual and reproductive health, like difficult to treat STIs or untreatable STIs, or resistance to drugs who are taking ART?
Yeah. So in a way, I mean, luckily, thank God, ART and AMR are not directly connected. So it's not that everybody taking ART will have, but you're right, AMR is on the rise, particularly for STIs. And we have drug-resistant gonorrhea, for example. And it can really, or UTI, not directly an STI, but at least a same related kind of function. And that is creating an issue. But on the other hand, the other issue is also there is not enough R&D in developing new drugs. And so, on one hand, we have this issue of AMR in STIs, particularly. On the other hand, there is so much antibiotic resistance all across the place, but there is just one antibiotic available for treatment of gonorrhea. So it's a little imbalance. There are not enough R&D on sulfa drugs. There is kind of it is something. AMR is something that might kind of has fallen through the net. People who are working actively on HIV talk about prevention and talk about treatment and ART also, the treatment of HIV. And then sexual reproductive health people, we talk more about family planning and then STI kind of falls in between. And both are giving responsibility to each other, and that's something which is dropping. And I think the data shows that STIs are on the rise, and we will have to respond to that very, very quickly. So yes, I think it can lead to a crisis. I mean, luckily not immediately, but if we don't do something about it, it can lead to a problem, big problem.
And what can we do? Anything, but what can we do to curb this drug resistance? Is it rations of drugs, or what can be done?
So as I say, I mean, the R&D is really necessary. Again, I would not say the focus on prevention overall. And when I say prevention, HIV prevention, spacing, all that discussion has kind of become very, there's a fatigue. And so either nobody's ready to invest funds in that, and nobody comes up with a creative thoughts around that. And that is an area of concern, that the health education that used to be the community education, community health education, public health education is really going down. I know preventive and social medicine department used to come up with such creative ideas. And now the main thing they do is research. Not actually engaging with people, giving them education, because it was in that when people will turn around and say, really, like we used to have big debate old days when young kids were dying of diarrhea, dehydration. And we would go to villages and we would say, oh, diarrhea kills children. And the doctors would say, no, dehydration kills children. Diarrhea doesn't kill. Like, it's public education. What should we say? What should not happen to the child? Is it diarrhea? So it's that debate gave rise to creative solutions. That debate would lead to community, more people-centered education. That part is missing, I think, these days, and particularly in sexual reproductive health. There is not enough discussion around spacing. There is not enough discussion about what suits me as a contraception, rather than what is given in the public service or what is available over the counter. I go to chemists to get my education. I mean, come on, no, that's not the source of education. So I think we need to collectively, invest more in health education, social education, in prevention side of the, and maybe positive living, I would say, because mental health is also something we are neglecting, all of us.
Very, very right. Very right, Sonal. So what is the way forward for the South Asia region to be on track on its commitments on SDGs, particularly in the context of gender equality, human rights? The way forward.
Shobha, I wish I could answer with enthusiasm this. Even without COVID-19, we would have not met our standards, right? So it's really sad that South Asia really need to do a lot to achieve its SDG goal of 2030 around gender equality. We need to start from making changes in our policy, to practice, to social thinking, to social education, to campaigns, a lot of things there. I would still want to say that there is a lot of potential in women, girls, and diverse population of the countries in South Asia. So I'm not kind of hopeless about it. It's just that if the agency of these people are given opportunities. And I think there are some governments who are being progressive. I would also want to say in this context, to a certain extent, traditionally Indian government has been progressive. But there are governments who are also, Nepal is fantastic on that front again. But we also have neighbor like Afghanistan, like Iran, who need to change thinking, where educated women get more opportunities because it is one woman educated is one family educated. Remember, we used to have that traditional kind of discussions and all. And it's I heard in the one of the popular Beijing Women's Conference that we need to empower men to support empowerment of women. And I think we probably are at that stage now. That if we are serious about the SDG goals at national and subnational levels, I think the governments will have to ensure that we have appropriate policy programs and services for men and women to understand what is the empowerment of women and support it.
Your message for ICFP 2022.
My message.
Yes.
I think we should, it's a no-brainer to me that we have to respond to the demographic change. That is the first thing. Yeah, if more than half of my population is young, I have to make sure the SRHR services is young people centered. Otherwise, I'm heading towards disaster. Gender equality and gender equity is again a no-brainer for me. It's not only for women, this traditional thinking, but for both men, women, and diverse population. And then finally, I think reproductive autonomy is a must for women's health and rights. If I'm not free to decide what happens to my body, I don't think we'll be able to achieve any kind of development or empowerment. Forget men, women, as I said, it has to be the bodily reproductive autonomy has to be there.
Thank you very much, Sonal. With this, we come to the close of today's conversation with Sonal Mehta, who is South Asia Regional Director at IPPF. My sincere thanks to Sonal for sharing her valuable insights on the status of sexual and reproductive health and rights across Southeast Asia region, and also suggesting they are doable but difficult steps to take for the way forward. But yes,
Sure.
that they are necessary. And we really must join hands to create a socially just and ecological sustainable world order for everyone. And this can only be a feminist world order, Sonal, according to me.
Absolutely.
I firmly believe in a feminist fossil fuel free future, the 5 Fs.
Sure.
So
Oh, nice.
goodbye.
I like